So you've probably seen a lot of dudes who have acne on gear and are suffering from it continuously throughout their entire time using total doses of anything, really. And it's kind of common, let's be honest. There's a lot of guys who get on androgens and they develop a ton of acne. It develops as a cystic acne, topical acne, and then they get scarring. It's just not a pretty look, all for pursuit of gains. But we're going to use a guy today on Instagram who is going to be our martyr because ultimately he has acne, and I wanted to talk a little bit about his physique, what he looks like, because Nicholas from Bodybuilding and Bullshit has reviewed his profile on his Instagram, and I thought, this is interesting. Let's take a closer look at what this guy's doing and why he might be developing acne. So as you can see here, we have Louis Credis. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm sorry, man. He's 19 fucking years old, and this dude is sauced to the gills. He's absolutely massive. Now, to be honest, he says in a lot of different comments that he's taken only up to about 350 milligrams of androgens. In fact, this guy asks, what gear do you use? You look very good. And he says, just test, bro. He asks about the doses, and then he elaborates, well, based on your genetics. But yeah, I did 250 milligrams for 5 months, 350 milligrams for 12 weeks while cutting, and 300 milligrams at the current moment. And his physique looks like this. At 19 years old, this is pretty damn good. But what Nick had brought up as a very valid point was this individual's acne development. It's pretty bad. It's cystic acne. He's going to get some form of scarring from this. Now, this a huge issue that's relevant to gear ultimately. Now, it's a little bit unattractive to see this as a person just looking around. You don't usually think of it as normal to have cystic acne. But does this mean that this individual is causing it on his own and that the small doses of 300 to 350 milligrams of testosterone is giving this individual this bout of cystic acne? Well, it's actually probably very unlikely, because as you go back into this individual's Instagram profile, and dude, I appreciate you posting this much content, because at the end of the day, it helps provide as much information as possible on the internet and gives a great case study as to what happens linearly as you increase doses, as well as progress in training in general. And in this video, you can see him like very, very young, 14 to 15 years old. And he doesn't have a lot of acne development, but still in the chest area, you can see that there is cystic acne. Then as he converts into an 18-year-old, it starts to get a little bit worse until the current, which you just saw, and that's pretty bad. Specifically, the acne on his face is still present in all of these photos. You can see that very clearly. What is really critical to understand is that this person was obviously very prone to acne development. I think it's fair to say that he's had acne his entire life, and he's probably going to have acne for his entire life unless he does some extreme therapies to ameliorate the acne itself, which we'll touch on a little bit later. The whole social media movement, which is posting your acne and like how bad it is while posing, is crazy right now. Like, there's tons of videos like this online. I'm sure you guys have seen them in your algorithm as you're swiping through. So that's one thing, which I don't really appreciate seeing that on my feed, and I don't think you do either. In fact, I think it just garners attention because it garners hate, and ultimately that is what we get when we garner hate, is a lot of algorithmic proficiency. But in this individual's case, with cystic acne that he's had for his lifetime, only taking 350 milligrams at a top end dose, as long as he's telling the truth, which I think he is, his physique's not outrageously big or anything that I would consider to be wildly unnatural, I really think he could probably leverage a couple different things in his strategy to ameliorate the acne that he does have and continue to progress it in the right direction versus the wrong direction, which, let's be honest, from the pictures when he's 14, 15 years old, scaling up to 19 years old, it has gotten drastically worse. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but obviously Sam Sulek is in this category too. So Sam Sulek had very, very, very bad acne. This is what he looks like now, but when he first started publishing on the YouTubes, and ultimately he had a ton of acne as well. It was developed everywhere, cystic acne, big time. And it was honestly horrible. Like, it looked absolutely terrible. But he was able to reverse it entirely. Now you see on his physique very little acne, just normal blemishes that you and I have. But how did he do this? And it was quite simple. He says here, using Accutane. Now, as much as some people like to hate on this, I think Accutane is probably one of the best therapies to use for someone who's developing cystic acne on androgens. But there is some things that I would do first in the line of importance. to ameliorate this acne. So let's go through exactly what those are, so hopefully you can leverage a little bit and improve your acne if you're struggling with it at all. The first thing is my go-to, vitamin B5 at a megadose. And I'm talking a very, very high megadose, something like 5 to 10 grams of vitamin B5 per day. Now, there's been some very good studies done, just like this one, that are double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials where they're using things like vitamin B5 at a very large dose. Not as large as I'm suggesting, but still a frequently larger dose than what you or I would take in a normal daily supplement. And what do they find? Well, if we're to be like every other steroid hobo on the internet and just go to the results and conclusions section, we would find that the results of this study indicate that the administration of pantothenic acid-based dietary supplements in healthy adults with facial acne lesions is safe, well tolerated, and reduced total facial lesions versus placebo after 12 weeks. Now, this is my go-to because ultimately what it does is it saves a lot of health at the end of the day. Things that are quite extreme, tretinoin, which is a topical variation of Accutane or another version of a retinol cream essentially, you got to be very careful. There are detrimental side effects related to these compounds, and generally they do alter epigenetics. I mean, they change the pores on your skin, and that's ultimately how they work. Whereas vitamin B5, through some indirect mechanism, is ameliorating acne quite sufficiently. That's step number one. But step number two is a pretty simple one. And I know this sounds ridiculous to reiterate, but it's so important. There's a couple things I see guys do, especially young guys just starting to take androgens, that is kind of absurd to me, and it might sound like common sense to you, but to be honest, there's a lot of guys that do this. One of the things is, for example, using your towel after a shower for like an entire week without changing it. You know, going months at a time without changing your sheets. Not having any appropriate facial care whatsoever. And I'm talking like a facial cleanser, exfoliants, toner, topical serums, and then lotions on top of that. I mean, if you look at a woman's protocol, it's kind of ridiculous the amount of shit that they put on their face and the hundreds and hundreds of dollars that they spend just to have good facial care. And men literally pour absolutely $0 into their facial care for the most part. And especially younger guys who really whimsically don't care about their facial quality, skin, or what have you. It's like a forethought after the forethought, man. Like, they aren't considering it at all. And if this individual was to just simply start to use some sort of topical routine where he had, you know, toner, cleanser, exfoliants, things of this nature, I think you'd find a lot of results just in his facial features and then on his chest too, because that doesn't just have to apply to your face. Now, third, and this is the nuclear option, which is kind of after everything, right? Like, you've attempted to meet very hygienic, you have attempted megadosing, vitamin B5, and now you're moving on to the more serious guns. There's actually two options that I would recommend before using oral Accutane. The first one is going to be doxycycline. This is an antibiotic, and essentially what it's going to do is nuke the acne, and specifically more so the bacteria on your skin. Now, acne in and of itself is developed through some bacterial interactions with the cholesterol and triglycerides that are released from your sebaceous glands, a substance we call sebum. And no, not the bodybuilder. That is just the substance of oil that leaks onto your skin. But the bacteria and the sebum work together to create really infectious sites that basically are like minor infections, right? They grow, pester, and this is where the redness and whiteheads develop. So if you can neutralize the bacteria that are instigating the acne development with the oils that are on your skin, you neutralize the acne in and of itself. Now, some people's acne is completely androgen mediated, meaning that it is the androgens they're taking that are causing directly the acne that they have on their face. So in this case, what I would actually recommend as a second pharmaceutical nuclear option is going to topical tretinoin. Now, you can start at a very low concentration here because it is powerful and it will dry your skin out very quickly if you start at a very high concentration. So basically where I would start at for most people, and this is relatively cheap online if you can find the right sources. Shout out to our Discord group, which if you're not in it, you're kind of a loser. Just kidding, that's not true. But I would start at 0.01% concentrations of any sort of tretinoin cream. It doesn't matter what brand name, to be honest. And then if that doesn't seemingly get you side effects, but nor positive effects, I would then scale up to 0.02% concentrations. Then the total nuclear option would be going up to 0.05% concentration. You're asking yourself, 0.05 is absolutely fucking nothing. What is this going to do to my skin? Trust me, from personal experience, this will dry out your skin if you are not tolerant to it. It's not something you want to put on your skin and just go woohoo, because ultimately what it might do is just completely dry your skin out to a point in which it actually makes the lesions on your face significantly worse. But this is only option number 2. Let's say you're not getting the conclusive effects that you want to from topical tretinoin, which if you've made it this far, you are absolutely cursed, bro. I'm so sorry. What you're gonna do is start taking Accutane. And Accutane is a good, useful compound, but we have to be very considerate of how we use it. It's not very safe in terms of what it's doing to our hepatic system. We don't want to use it for a prolonged period of time, and we certainly don't want to use it for a very high amplitude of dose for a long period of time. This is probably the best bet if you're taking androgens and yet to have found a solution. And I know there's a lot of you out there who are in this boat. Taking something like 80 to up to 140 milligrams of Accutane per day for about 12 to 16 weeks is pretty much what will do it for you. But you have to remember, this is the complete nuclear option, because ultimately the list of side effects is massive, and some of these are not just temporary. Keep this in mind. There has been many self-reported cases of having long-term side effects from isotretinoin or Accutane. And these include everything from psychiatric symptoms to permanently dry lips and skin. And this is no joke. This actually happens in a lot of people and is very, very concerning and gets ignored when people say, hey bro, just take Accutane. It's also why I'm so bullish on taking a very large dose, but for a very, very short amount of time. We want to basically create an epigenetic change within your skin, shrinking pores down and drying them out, but not do too much as to create permanent changes that are going to result in you having permanently dry skin and lips. So brother, you have an absolutely sick physique, Lewis. I just hope that maybe you can find some solutions to your acne, and I really recommend you do it fast, because at the end of the day, the only way you're going with androgens is up if you want to take a bodybuilding career very seriously. And as you scale those androgens up, so too will the acne scale up. And the best way to mediate it is to take your time and tackle it before increasing doses. I would do one of the 3 things I mentioned, and then when you do go nuclear, take your time testing things out and making sure that they work for you, because there is potential long-term side effects that could be detrimental to your future and to your cosmetic appearance, which obviously is something extremely important. But if you guys have any anecdotal evidence of what worked for you when mediating acne, shoot them down below in the comments, because I'd love to hear it, and obviously use case studies. To be honest, it's completely selfish. Alternatively, what you could do while you're down there is click the subscribe button, even maybe that bell button, and send this to a friend who's struggling with acne right now on cycle.